right. Let's start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is They Can't Hit What They Can't See. And pretty much this lesson comes to the inspiration of a video brother sent me earlier dealing with a 60 minutes video dealing with the so-called UFOs or UAPs, whatever you want to call them. The UFOs is a term just pretty much the public uses. UAP is a term or acronym that the military uses. UFO, unidentified flying objects. UAP, unidentified air phenomena. I was watching the video. I watched it about 4 or 5 times, just to get like an overall, gist of what, the video was about, which was dealing with the chariots, which, the scriptures call the chariots. Esau calls it UFOs, UAPs, because they can't identify what it is with anything on earth. But they know what it is. They know it's the angels. And this is why you had different presidents speak about the so-called chariots or the so-called UFOs, which are the chariots, because they know that it's a threat to national security of pretty much of the world. And these are the vehicles that the Lord is coming back in, to deliver the elect and also to destroy Esau's empire. And as I was watching the video, hopefully I can remember some of the points. What I thought about was, if these so-called UFOs were nothing but a hoax or just some BS, why would they spend so much money on research and having people comb through evidence, whether it's videos of these so-called phenomenons, as they call it. Why would they spend so much money on that if it was just BS? And pretty much after a while they dismissed it, and there was this one individual that, after like 20 years of working for the Pentagon, he quit because they refused to make all that stuff public. And he researched it. He was called into different meetings. He researched it. He knew it was actually true, but he said there was no media attention or governmental attention given to it. So he ended up quitting. But they're still researching, these so-called phenomena, which they're the chariots. Anyone with a working knowledge of the Bible, that has any studying in the Bible, they know that the Bible identifies these objects, and the objects are the chariots of the Lord. Sometimes they're called whirlwinds, sometimes they're called clouds. It all depends on the chapter and verse. So I wanted to kind of get into it, and the title itself came from a boxer, which I didn't know who it was at first. I couldn't think of it, but then I typed it online. It was Muhammad Ali, that famous float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. And he also said his hands can't hit what his eyes can't see. And there was a particular, some pilots that were given testimony on how this particular tic-tac shaped object, which was the size of their jet, they were approaching it, to get a closer look. And when they got close to it, it disappeared. So that's when that thought came into mind. Their eyes can't hit, their hands can't hit what their eyes can't see. And pretty much I just left it at they can't hit what they can't see, because the chariots can cloak. There's chariots around now. just can't see them, because they're cloaked. They're invisible. This is the reason why Elisha prayed to the Lord to open up the young man's eyes to be able to see the angels in the chariots that were there at the time. And they're there though. Nevertheless, they're there. They're holding back the winds of destruction. They're working on the minds of generals. They're working on the minds of different leaders around the world, to get these things popping, the prophecies popping. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to start off in the book of Ezekiel, the first chapter, because this is a major chapter dealing with the angels, dealing with the chariots, or the so-called UFOs. So let's start off in Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 4. And Salaki for the long intro, but I just wanted to try to get some of those thoughts in there, some of those points in there. And if I remember anything along the way from the video, I'll mention it. I also got a couple of articles or web pages I would like to get into, which I took stills of, and see where it goes. Matter of fact, before we get into it, let me just read this one real quick. This one is called Project Bluebeam. Now, Project Bluebeam, as we're going to read here, is pretty much Esau plans on, faking the second coming of the Lord, and this is what it says. It says, Project Bluebeam is a conspiracy theory. That's what they always say, conspiracy theory, which is not, about a supposed project whose purpose is to create an artificial second coming in order to control people, as per the alleged theory. The New World Order's purpose is, number one, to abolish all Christian and traditional religion in order to replace them with a one world religion based on the cult of man, which is exactly what they want to do. Number two, to abolish all national identities and national pride in order to establish a world identity and a world pride, this is what they're doing. Everything that they're pushing for is a one world government, one world economy, one world religion, everything based off of one world. And then the last one, number three, is to abolish the family as known today in order to replace them with individuals all working for the glory of the New World Order, a New World government. And you see that, you see that in these different movies, such as 1984, Handmaid's Tale, and these futuristic movies where they show these things. Now I wanted to get it also into another article called Project Blue Book, but Lord's will, we'll get into that. I want to get into these precepts. All right, so the book of Ezekiel chapter 1 and verse 4, it says, and I looked, and behold, a whirlwind. And this is Ezekiel, the prophet Ezekiel, actually seeing the chariots up in the heavens. And he described it as a whirlwind because the chariots spin around. In some cases they just stay still. In other cases they spin around. They appear in different shapes. This is why you have different reports speaking about triangular shape, so-called UFOs, circular shape, cigar shape, and different square shape. It depends, on how the chariot appears. It says, came out of the north a great cloud, meaning a huge cloud, and a fire enfolding itself. For you to really understand a fire enfolding with it, a fire enfolding, Salakia, and a fire enfolding itself, one just needs to watch that movie ID4, and it shows you a perfect picture of that. It's a big, huge, giant chariot in the heavens, and you see it coming out of a cloud, and you see a fire coming out of it. And that fire is a representation of the lights that are around the chariot itself. It says, and out of the midst thereof, as the color of amber, out of the midst of the fire. Yeah, because the lights are bright, and Ezekiel described it as amber, these lights. It says, also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures. So you have these 4 living creatures, which are representations of the angels. Now the angels can come looking different. They could come as just looking like men. They could come looking different shapes, different forms, because they're outside of this dimension. You know, they're not subject to the 3D. You know, they're four dimensional. That's why they move the way they do. That's why they can appear, disappear. All right. It says, and this was the appearance. They had the likeness of a man because they were actual men. But they also had faces, different faces. But they were actual men. And the prophet Ezekiel is describing this particular man. Now, there was this Edomite on YouTube. I'm not sure if they still have it up there, where he said that the being that he saw was actually a so-called black man. He was so-called black. You know, he actually seen it. There's been reports of that. I've seen years ago. I seen a documentary. I just can't for the life of me remember. I saw it once, but I never saw it again. Where they actually had a drawing of an angel with an afro, you know, with dark brown skin. You know, dressed up like, you know, with the garments and everything. But I just never ever seen that again. So I'm not sure like what documentary it was or whatever the case may be. Well, there are reports of these so-called aliens being so-called black men. But what do? They paint them as big head, gray, you know, or green creatures. And the reason why they paint the big heads is because that's to cover up the afro part, to show you that the angels have afros. They showed you that in a series called the Twilight Zone episode called To Serve Man. They had the Canaanites, and the Canaanites were real tall, and they had big round heads. Well, those big round heads was a representation of the fro that was coming, that was around them. You know, and then when you look at the beings, they look like so-called black men. You know, but they just made them look grayish, because that's Esau's way of pushing the narrative of the so-called grays, that they're evil, wicked, you know, beings, and so on and so forth. And this is why I believe RTD, rethinking the dollar, that's why I believe he believes that they're demonic, because of that narrative that Esau painted of the angels. You see? And he doesn't have the knowledge of the scriptures to be able to get a better understanding. But if the Lord, you know, directs his path, you know, he'll find it. All right, moving on. It says, and every one had 4 faces, and every one had 4 wings, and their feet were straight feet. They were shaped like men. It says, and the sole of their feet, meaning at the bottom of the foot, was like the sole of a calf's foot, because the angels are dressed. They're not flying around butt naked like Cupid, like they show you them babies flying around with a bow and arrow, you know, with their ass hanging out and their junk hanging out. The angels are clothed with garments, and they wear, you know, you have something called, I'm not sure I'm not sure the technical name for it, but you have these type boots that ninjas wear, you know, that have this toe separated from the rest of the foot. You know, so this is what Ezekiel saw and was describing. Because remember, he was describing it from head to foot, just like the Apostle John was describing Yahushua from head to foot. All right? But in the case of Yahushua had on sandals because he gave the color of his feet. As to where this just gave it said it looked like a calf's foot. And what is a calf's foot? A calf's foot is cloven. So what could cause that cloven foot in a man? The what you call it? The boots. You know, you could type that in. No ninja boots, or the toe separated from the rest of the other 4 toes. It says, and they sparkle like the color of burnished brass. Now, burnished brass is brown. So these beings were so-called black men. But these so-called black men, when they appeared to Ezekiel, had actually 4 faces, and those 4 faces were characteristics of the angels. But they can appear like that. They can appear with eyes all over the place. You know, they could appear as a horrific monster. You know, it all depends on the mission that they're sent on. It says, and they had the hands of a man under their wings on their 4 sides, and they 4 had their faces and their wings. Their wings were joined one to another. It says, their wings were joined one to another. They turned not when they went. Yeah, because when they walk, they don't have to turn. They don't have to be subjected to the same limitations that we're subjected to here in this 3D world. You know? So that's why when they walk, it's like those of you brothers that ever played Street Fighter, you see Bison, he just hovers back and forth. Or you just look at that and think of it hovering side to side. When we read the book of Genesis, the 1st chapter, there's one part where it spoke about the angels moving upon, I forget exactly what it was, the waters, which are the elements. It says that they hovered. The Hebrew word there is marakapath. So they hovered among the upon the elements, you know, in the 4th dimension, to cause them to come together, illuminate, and do whatever they had to do. So that's how the angels move. They hover. They're not like I said, they're not subjected to the limitations that we have. It says they turned not when they went everyone straight forward. See, they didn't have to turn. As for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the face of a man, and the face of a man, which was an actual man, is a representation of wisdom, and the face of a lion, and there was an actual face of a lion which Ezekiel saw, and that face of a lion represents courage on the right side. And they 4 had the face of an ox, which was an actual ox, and the face of an ox is a representation of strength, because angels excel in strength. On the left side, they 4 also had the face of an eagle, and they actually had an eagle's face. 4 faces, and the eagle's face is a representation of flight, because they can fly. They're not subjected to the limitations of man. It says, thus were their faces, and their wings were stretched upward. 2 wings of every one were joined one to another. 2 covered their bodies. It says, and they went every one straight forward, whither the spirit was to go. They went, and they turned not when they went. Yeah, because they don't have to turn. This is why you hear of these Air Force pilots that have encountered them, and they're trying to chase them down and lock in on them to shoot them down. They you hear them saying that they are doing maneuvers that man can't do, because they could be going forward, and they could be right on their ass, and then they could just shoot to the left or shoot to the right or shoot up or shoot down or disappear, and Esau can't do that. If an aircraft tried to do that, the aircraft would fall apart. Esau would fall apart. So that's why the title is they can't hit, but they can't see. So imagine trying to fight against something like that. Something, you know, supernatural as that. And these devils know. That's why Dwight Eisenhower and other presidents, Ronald Reagan, that started the Star Wars program, gave a speech at the UN one time, because the UN is what? The United Nations, all nations coming together. He said, what if we found out that there was an alien force and it was threatening us? Wouldn't we put all our differences aside, you know, and come together to fight against it? Because they know eventually they're going to have to fight against it. This is why you have all of these satellites and all of this technology and all of these laser weapons and all that stuff you have in outer space. because they're trying to identify when the Lord Yahushua comes back. But that's why the Lord says he's not going to meet them as a man. So they're going to be in some serious trouble when Yahushua comes back. And they're getting ready. But it's in vain. It says, as for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire. Yeah, because the angels are light. It tells us that in the book of Psalms, the 104th chapter. It tells us that in the book of Hebrews, the 1st chapter. That they're a fire. And the Heavenly Father himself is a consuming fire. Because the spirit is nothing but energy. It says, and like the appearance of lamps. Yeah, that's why when you see, when the Apostle Paul saw Yahushua, what happened? He was blinded because of the splendor of that light, that brightness, that fire, that glow. It says, and like the appearance of lamps, it went up and down among the living creatures. Yeah, because they were glowing. And the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning. It says, and the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. So this is why they said that they were going 13,000 miles an hour, or whatever they said they were going. It was humanly impossible to move at the speed that these crafts are moving. And those crafts that are moving have pilots inside of them, have actually someone in there navigating them. So these devils are on an impossible mission to fight against Yahushua and the angels. But they're going to do it because it's written. It says, now as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures, with his 4 faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl, and they 4 had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. So he saw the object that he saw, the chariot he saw was a round chariot, but the round chariot was round, but it also looked like they had another wheel in the middle of it, because those were the lights shining, and they could have been shining like they did the night when we saw them, out there, when Vocab and them clowns came, to pretty much to ambush, the camp with the help of that devil Abu Kamar. They came to ambush the camp, and right after they turned the corner, and G-Man came up the block, there appeared lights in the heavens, and they started flashing different colors. And then there was a certain amount, and there was more. There was a whole bunch of them, and they were flashing different colors. So it was a bunch of them, but they were flashing different colors. So this is what we see going on here. So the wheel inside of the wheel was the way the ship was shaped, and also it could have been the lights flashing, around, and just seemed like they were just spinning. But remember, also we read about the whirlwind of the Lord. So you have chariots that do actually spin. It says the wheel in the middle of the wheel, when they went upon their 4 sides, and they turned not when they went. Yeah, because they're not subject to the same laws of gravity and the same laws of humans, because they have a different makeup than humans. And as for their rings, now their rings is a representation of their windows. I'm gonna give you a quick precept on that, and then we're gonna get gonna go to the concordance real quick. Let's go from there to the book of Isaiah, the 60th chapter, and the 8th verse. Who are these that fly as a cloud, which are the chariots, and as a doves to their windows? See? So you have the chariots that have windows in it. And that's why you have in verse 18 of Ezekiel 1, it says, as for their rings, they were so high that they were dreadful. When we look up that word rings, right? In the 18th verse, right? The word for rings is gob, convex surface. What is a convex surface? A convex surface is when you have something that protrudes outward, like an eye. If you look at the eye is shaped like a circle. It's convex. Concave would be the opposite. It would be like a cave. Convex would be like a protruding circle, so you could understand. You know, like let's see if I could give you a illustration. I'll just write it down. Right, you have convex on the top, which is protruding out, and you have concave, which is with cave, which is protruding in, like going inside of a cave. All right, so that's the windows on the chariots. You know, I can't draw, so I would try to draw, but I would probably just mess it up. But I'll try to draw something best as I can. So you would have, let's say the chariot is the round one, so like it for the kindergarten drawing, but that's the best I could do. There's a circle and you see the windows as a representation of those little bumps. All right, that's convex. All right, so that's the word gob. All right. It says mound for illicit worship. A mound. What is a mound? It's a hill. It says boss, convex projection of shield, bulwarks, breastworks, so on and so forth. All right, rim of a wheel. So it was the actual windows of these chariots. All right. Yeah, man, kick rocks. Whoever got problems, you know, whoever got an attitude, whoever don't want to just kick rocks, man. Go watch some booty shaking videos or some other bullshit. You know, you ain't got time to be playing games with you clowns. All right, so going back to Ezekiel 1:18, as for their rings, they were so high that they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them. Because that was the windows of the actual chariot. It says, and when the living creatures went, the wheels went. So whenever the angel moved, the chariots moved. It says, and when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Whithersoever the spirit was to go, they went. Thither was their spirit. Thither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the spirit of the living creatures or of the angels was in the wheels. So they were actually inside of these chariots maneuvering. And that's why Esau can't understand it. Is how can these things move this way? How come we don't have anything to defend against this? How come we don't have this type of technology? Where did this technology come from? And how are we going to be able to defend against them? See, because Esau's thing is he has to reason or rationalize everything logically, because they're not spiritual people, they're carnal men. So in order for things to make sense, they have to rationalize it, you know, carnally. It says, when those went, these went. And when those stood, these stood. And when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels, as we just stated before. It says, and the likeness of the firmament upon the heads of the living creature was as the color of the terrible crystals stretched forth over their heads above. Yeah, that's talking about the so-called ozone layer, which is the firmament. And it covers the whole, and it encircles the whole earth. It covers the whole earth. And under the firmament were their wings straight. The one toward the other, every one had two, which covered on this side, and every one had two, which covered on that side, their bodies. And when they went, I heard the noise of the wings, like the noise of great waters, as the voice of the Almighty, the voice of the speech, the voice of speech, as the noise of an host, which is preparing for battle. When they stood, they let down their wings. Yeah, so the sound of the wings of the angels were fluttering. You could hear it because the chariots themselves don't make noise unless the Lord wanted to make noise. And this is why there was one individual that was explaining the chariot, and he said there was no propulsion. You know, they had no propulsion. You couldn't tell how they were moving because jets have a propulsion. You know, they have the wings and they have, you know, the fire that comes out of the wings to help move them forward. The chariots don't have that. The chariots move in stealth, but the wings of the angels make noise. All right. It says, and above the firmament, meaning over the firmament, because you have people that say that there's no such thing as space, you know, and we're reading here that above the firmament, which shows you that there is something above there. And how do we know that also? Because when you go to Genesis, the first chapter, it said that the firmament was set up to separate the atmosphere from inside the earth from the atmosphere outside of the earth. So how is there no space? It says, and above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, which is where the Most High resides, as the appearance of a sapphire stone. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness of the appearance of a man above upon it, which is the Most High. And I saw as the color of amber, as the appearance of fire round about, round about within it, because that's talking about those lights that are coming up off of the chariots. From the appearance of his loins even upward, and from the appearance of his loins even downward, because that's that glow, you know, that majestic glow. That's why when the Lord would appear, it said that the glory of the Lord appeared. Here it is, you got a king, he's going to come in like a peasant? No. When the Lord shows up, this man, you got all the bells and whistles, everything that you, all the trimmings, everything, spared no expense. You know, the fireworks, the lightning show, everything. It says, I saw as it were the appearance of fire, and it had brightness round about, as the appearance of the bow that is in the clouds in the day of rain, like a rainbow, you know, with the beautiful colors, because that is a representation of the lights that are emanating off of these vehicles. So was the appearance of the brightness round about. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of Yahweh. And when I saw it, I fell upon my face, and I heard the voice of one that spake. All right. So this chapter is dedicated to the angels, the chariots, the Most High, you know, and him being up in the heavens. And these devils know that they have to contend with Yahweh Shai when he comes back. And they know that these vehicles that they can't explain is Yahweh Shai and the angels, but they can't let the public know that, because the public would panic, because all along they told them that these things don't really exist. And what they do, as they do here in Project Blue Book, not Project Blue Beams, different from Project Blue Book. In Project Blue Book, they tell you, this is from Wikipedia, Project Blue Book was the code name for the systematic study of unidentified flying objects by the United States Air Force from March 1952 to its termination on December 17, 1969. The project, headquartered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio, was initially directed by Captain Edward J. Ruppelt and followed projects of a similar nature such as Project Sign, established in 1947, and Project Grudge in 1948. Project Blue Book had two goals, namely to determine if UFOs were a threat to national security and to scientifically analyze UFO-related data. Thousands of UFO reports were collected, analyzed, and filed. As a result of the Condon Report, which concluded that the study of UFOs was unlikely to yield major scientific discoveries because they had to lie about it, and a review of the report by the National Academy of Sciences, Project Blue Book was terminated in 1969. So allegedly, it just went underground. It says the Air Force applies the following summary of its investigation. Number one, no UFO reported. Bullshit. Investigated and evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of threat to our national security. Yeah, because they're not ready to roll on your ass yet. Number two, there was no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified, represented technological developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge. And number 3, there was no evidence indicating that sightings categorized as unidentified were extraterrestrial vehicles. Yeah, because they can't make that correlation. They can't make that connection, but they know what it is. But see, Esau has to have the physical proof, otherwise they can't present it, because they're not people of faith. They're carnal. They're carnal. By the time Project Blue Book ended, it had collected 12,618 UFO reports. And this is why the dude that worked for the Pentagon quit the job, because they didn't want to release this information. They only released like 3 videos. So that's why he eventually quit, because he got disgusted, because he knew that these things were real, and they didn't want to bring it out to the media. They didn't want to address it. They didn't want to deal with it. It said and concluded that most of them were misidentifications of natural phenomena, clouds, stars, etc. Yeah, but what about the ones that weren't? And that's what they do. They explain it away that, oh, that was just a star, or that was some object, some flying balloon in the air. And this is what these dummies in America, especially in America, say. That's what they'll say. Oh, that was a hot air balloon, or that was this, or that was that. It was a glitch in the camera. Goddamn sheeple. Or conventional aircraft, according to the National Reconnaissance Office. A number of the reports could be explained by flights of the formerly secret reconnaissance plane U-2 and A-12. 701 reports were classified as unexplained. Even after stringent analysis, the UFO reports were archived and are available under the Freedom of Information Act, but names and other personal information of all witnesses have been redacted. Yeah, because they don't want that information out. Because at the end of the day, it's just a report, and if they don't have any names to it, then it's just a hearsay. These devils know what they're doing, but that's all right, because when the Lord appears, they're not going to be able to explain that away. Now, let's get into Zechariah 5:1. It says, then I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a flying roll. What was this flying roll? It was a circular object that was flying and hovering up above, and the prophet Zechariah seen it, and he's describing what he's seeing. He says, and he said unto me, how come they claim to be a God-fearing nation, a God-fearing country? How come they never read the scriptures and come across scriptures like this to equate it to these so-called phenomena? When you type in online, you could go to Google yourself and type online, and type in UFOs in the Bible, and you're going to come up with all different type of information, of pictures and different paintings throughout history of so-called vehicles in these paintings up in the heavens with actual beings inside of them. What is that? And he said unto me, what seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll. The length thereof is 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof is 10 cubits, which was a small chariot. A cubit, according to Esau, which back then the cubits were bigger, but according to Esau's calculations, a cubit is 18 inches. But back then, men were taller and bigger, so it depends on what time period you're talking about. So this could have been actually twice the size, maybe twice the size, or a little smaller than that, than what Esau would classify today. It says, then said he unto me, this is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth. Yeah, it's a curse unto Esau, because Esau are the main robbers of the planet. It says, this is the curse that goeth over the face of the whole earth, for everyone that stealeth, which is Esau is a thief, shall be cut off as on this side according to it. Yeah, and they're about to get cut off. It says, and everyone that sweareth shall be cut off as on that side according to it. Yeah, because they make you swear in on the Bible when you go in to these different courts. When you go to certain into certain office or certain jobs with the government. It says, I will bring it forth, saith the Lord of hosts, and it shall enter into the house of the thief. Who is the house of the thief? Esau. And for years, they've been entering into the house of the thief. Going back to the 50s, when they first reported it, there was a fleet of UFOs. If you type in fleet of UFOs over the Capitol building, you'll see pictures, actual pictures of the chariots hovering over the Capitol building. And at that time, I think it was Eisenhower that was the president. He sent forth the Air Force out there, but by the time the Air Force got there, the chariots were gone. It says, shall enter to the house of the thief, and into the house of him that sweareth falsely by my name. And they know the name of the Most High. That's why they're paying individual clowns to hide those names. And it shall remain in the midst of his house. And that's why you see them all over the place, because they're remaining in the midst of his house. They ain't going nowhere. Just because you don't see them don't mean that they ain't there. That's why Elisha said, Lord, please open this man's eyes so that he could see. He told him there's more with us than is with them. And when the Lord opened his eyes, he looked up. He saw the chariots. He saw the angels. He saw the multitudes that were out there up in the heavens. Like right now, there's a multitude out there, but we can't see them. And if they were to appear, your first thought might be to get a little nervous, because they have a presence with them. It says, and they shall remain in the midst of his house. Why? Because they have a mission. So they've already been deployed. They already, as Esau would say, they're already occupying, what do they call that? Airspace. They're already occupying airspace, and waiting to the Lord Yahweh to give the order for them to get busy, to do work. And then you'll see the cloaking come off, and you see the gloves come off, and then that's Esau's ass, because your hands can't hit what your eyes can't see. Devil. And shall consume it with the timber thereof and the stones thereof. Yeah, because they're going to actually shoot lasers from these chariots. You could read the book of Habakkuk, the 3rd chapter, to explain that. Now, let's move from there to the Apocryphy, as King Mashai used to say it. Let's go to 2nd Ezra chapter 13, and we're going to start at the first verse. It says, and it came to pass, after 7 days, I dreamed a dream by night. So this was an actual vision that Ezra saw concerning the kingdom of heaven when Yahushua comes back to gather his elect and to destroy this present evil, wicked world. It says, and lo, there arose a wind by the sea, that it moved all the waves thereof. And I beheld, and lo, that man waxed strong. What man? Yahushua waxed strong with the thousands of heaven, which are what? The angels and the chariots. And when he turned his countenance to look, all the things trembled that were seen under him. Yeah, because people are going to be nervous. That's why it says there's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Because the things that they're going to witness are not going to be able to be explained. And the explanation that Esau has for them now is that they don't exist. It's a hoax. It's a lie. And that's what, Esau, the so-called narrative that Esau pushes out there. And that's why the average person, when you speak about so-called UFOs, they look at you strange. Now they're more susceptible to believe it a little more, because now the government has said that they are actually there. They are actually real. And their only main concern is to find out if they pose a national threat, which they do, but just not yet. So it says, and wheresoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth faileth when it feeleth the fire. Yeah, because the Lord is coming to bring fire. Did not he say, I came to send fire on the earth, and what will I if it be already kindled? He's going to bring more fire. He's going to bring fire from the lasers. It's very possible that the Lord can cause the elements in the heavens to light up on fire like they did during Sodom and Gomorrah. Then you got the hailstones, which are the missiles coming, the nuclear missiles. So it's going to be all hell out here, man. Then you're going to have these so-called defense missiles that are going to be shot to try to destroy the nuclear missiles, and those are going to hit somewhere and cause more destruction. It says, and after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men. And what is this multitude of men that is being gathered? This multitude of men that's being gathered are these nations and their armies. Let's go real quick to the book of Zephaniah, real quick. Zephaniah chapter 3 and verse 8. It says, therefore wait ye upon me, saith the Lord, unto the day that I rise up to the prey. Because the Lord is the one that's going to do this thing. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon them mine indignation, even all my fierce anger, for all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. Yeah, because Esau's earth is going to be destroyed by the fire of the Lord's jealousy. And that is his indignation. You know, for everything that you did, Esau, for 2/3 of Israel, for the other Israelites around the world that are going to receive judgment, for you nations, you know, it's going to be vicious. The scriptures say that the earth is going to rock to and fro like a drunkard. Never, ever in the history of man has there ever been an earthquake quite like this one. Hey. Now, let's go from there. Let's go back to 2nd Ezra, chapter 13, and verse 5 again. And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number. Armageddon, does that sound familiar? Harmageddon, mountain of the troops. Yahweh Shaphat, Jehoshaphat, Yahweh's judgment. From the four winds of the heaven to subdue the man that came out of the sea. Yeah, because they're going to come from all places where you have militaries. And they're all going to try to come together as one to fight against Yahweh Shai. And they're going to get slaughtered. But I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain, because the chariot that he coming in is huge. So when Ezra saw it, he compared it to a mountain and flew up upon it, because he was in the chariot. But I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not, because he thought it was an actual mountain. And he looked on the earth to see where on the earth there was this mountain that was missing. And after this I beheld, and lo, all they were gathered together to subdue him. And after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet durst fight. Why? Because the Lord is going to put the spirit on them to fight. You know? And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his sword, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war, but only I saw that he sent out of his mouth as it had been a blast of fire. And we could read about that in Luke 12:49, Habakkuk the 3rd chapter, you know, and others. And out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests. That's dealing with the lasers from the chariots. And they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which were prepared to fight. And this brings to mind the book of Revelation, chapter 18. Let's get that real quick. Get ready to close it out. Revelation 18 and 20. And when we see these things, we're supposed to be getting happy. We ain't supposed to be, oh, let America mourn, you know, because they getting jacked up. No, man, fuck them. You know, it's time for these devils to go down. Revelation 18 and 20. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for the Most High hath avenged you on her. That's why it's going to be so vicious, this destruction. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And America is going to go out in violence. It was it was made through violence, and it's going to be destroyed by violence. What do you mean it was made by violence? Well, how did they get this land? They took it from the so-called North American Indians. That was straight violence, man. They straight gangstered this place. And the thing about it was God was even willing to allow these devils land. You know? He said, why can't we just share the land? Why must you have all of it? To show you that God wasn't you know, they wasn't not willing to share the land. But these devils want it all. That's that greed in Habakkuk the 2nd chapter. Now, let's go back to 2nd Ezra chapter 13 and 11. And they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, which is all those armies, and burned them up every one, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude, nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. So the Lord is going to smoke your ass, Esau. Your military, you know, your jets, your missiles, you know, all these other different nations and their militaries and their jets and all of that. Helicopters, whatever the hell you got, the Lord's going to destroy you. You know, he's going to burn it. He's going to burn it down. Now, I had another precept, but I think pretty much the point, you know, is already made. You know, you know, if you want, you can read the book of Revelation 19. It goes into it, you know, in more detail, you know, of this destruction that's coming. You know, so they can't hit what they can't see, which is a direct quote from, well, not direct, but it's a quote based off of Muhammad Ali and his saying, you know, that the flow like a butterfly, sting like a bee. You know, his eyes can't hit. His hands can't hit what his eyes can't see. You know, so Esau, you in trouble, Jack, because the Lord ain't playing. Them angels, when they appear, they're gonna appear, disappear. They're gonna be toying with you. They're gonna be playing with you, man. They're gonna be slap boxing. You know, you just like a cat slap boxes a mouse that he caught, and he's just toying with him before he actually rips his head off. And so the Lord Yahushua is coming back to rip your head off, man. Remember, the day of vengeance burns in his heart. So with that, I pray that your brothers have been edified. Stay strong. Keep the faith. Keep on fighting. We're almost out of here. Hey, Yahbashim Yashai, Brak a thumb to you Akim out there. And Shalom to the you Akim, the sincere ones, and to you sisters. Shalom.